I'll tell you what, how about, since there's not that many of us here like this, how about moving up? I won't spit, I won't call you up, unless you're in the back. If you're in the back, I'll call you to come. Luke chapter 7, turn to it if you will on the way. Basically, in this session, as Gene kind of concludes over there with the girls, and we kind of do this together here, my job is to really make you guys feel like you're really bad husbands. And so I figure most of you already feel that way. So instead, what I usually just like to do is kind of take turns telling jokes with the agreement you will not tell the women. That's what we did. No, I'm just kidding. But let me read to you, or turn to it if you will, to Luke chapter 7, verse 36. And one of the Pharisees desired him, that being Jesus, that he would eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house, and he sat down to meat. And behold, a woman of the city, which was a sinner. When she knew that Jesus sat at meat at the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster box of ointment, and stood at his feet behind him weeping, and began to wash his feet with tears, and did wipe them with the hairs of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. Now when the Pharisee which had bidden him saw it, he spake within himself, saying, This man, if he were a prophet, would have known who and what manner of woman this is that touches him, for she is a sinner. Then Jesus answered, and he said unto him, Simon, I have somewhat to say to thee. And he said unto him, O Master, say on. And he said, Well, there was a certain creditor which had two debtors. The one owed him 500 pence, and the other 50. And when they had nothing to pay, he forgave them both. Tell me, therefore, which of them will love him most? Well, Simon answered, he says, Well, I suppose that he whom he forgave the most. And he said unto him, Thou hast rightly judged. And he turned to the woman, and he said to Simon, Seest thou this woman? I entered into thy house, and thou gavest me no water for my feet, but she has washed my feet with her tears. And washed them with my hairs of her head. Thou gavest me no kiss, but this woman, since the time I came in, hath not ceased to kiss my feet. My head with oil thou didst not anoint, but this woman, which has anointed my feet with ointment. Wherefore I say unto thee, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loves much. To whom little is forgiven, the same loveth little. And he said unto her, Thy sins are forgiven thee. You know, when Jesus came here to the world, the benefits are innumerable, I guess. I mean, you really couldn't even begin to try to, if somebody was to sit down and say, what are all the benefits of Jesus coming here? You could just go on and on and on. The primary reason for which he came was to be a sacrifice. He had to pay for man's sin, had to pay the debt, and only he could do it. He had that, so being heaven's sacrificial lamb, doing his ministry of atonement on the cross. That was the primary thing, but the benefits, of his being here were astounding in so many ways. And not that anything had really changed with God, but with the dimension of now having Jesus being here incarnate there and becoming visible, it added a dimension to what people thought of God. And oftentimes a lot of correction to what they misthought about him. Because now essentially, first of all, God had always been love, but now love was visible. In the sense that you could look around, there was the reality of the love of God. There is where Jesus went, and he's loving. And there wasn't like, oh, God has decided to become loving now. He'd always been loving. But now Jesus added that dimension to it, that personalization of it, with that look, the behavior. Just the voice inflection, all this capacity there to reflect feelings and emotions and things that God had always had, in his heart towards man. And, we're living in a world that is becoming, I think when Jesus here, all of a sudden that God's sensitivity to man became real. God's heart, God's care. The reality, they saw the sensitivity, and unfortunately we're living in a world today that's becoming more and more desensitized. more and more, we as a society, even, when you come here, to, where people are still somewhat in a little bit more rural areas. At the turn of the 19th century, 95% of the U.S. population lived in rural areas. Only, approximately 4 to 6% were in what we call, in urban, in cities. The vast amount of the American population, they were out there, farmers, ranchers, small communities, small towns. It's the way the country was really settled, and people had they helped build each other's houses and care for each other's families and go through, very involved in people's lives. They all knew one another in these communities for so much of the world, of our history. But here, as things began to shift, there was they've never stopped it. And then, of course, with things happening of the whole industrialization of the country, with mass production, with assembly lines, and being able, in manufacturing, changing so much, and people beginning to move to cities, and then, of course, as farms, ranches, taken over by, big conglomerates that now could put out these, fabulous, equipment to go and plant a crop, harvest a crop. You see these massive tractors and things that that are very expensive, but now they can handle tens of thousands of acres. And my a great uncle, he had a ranch, 160 acres, and it was your typical ranch of so many. I'd go up there in the summers as a little boy, and I'd be with him for a week or two, and he was just this wonderful Uncle Bill. I'd get up like at 5 in the morning and go sit on his tractor with him, and we'd go out there and he had his crop, had some cattle, had some sheep, had chickens, and just did one of those ma and pa ranches there that was so typical of the country. But of course, that found itself, meeting its end and selling out, to that. But it was just such a different world. I remember just sitting on his tractor was the most fun thing to me. And then waiting, literally, my aunt, she had one of those triangles that would come out, and the clang, clang, and we could hear that even on the tractor. Told us to come in, and there was a big pile of bacon and enough to feed far more than were there. But, and eggs and, but it was just a different world, and we've come now to where you go into the cities, virtually everywhere that have taken over the United States. Well, some years ago now, I was in New York. We were being taken around, and there was 2 buildings next to each other. And each one of these buildings in these cities, there were 30 some odd buildings, stories high. And each one of the buildings, I was told, they averaged 30,000 people lived in each one of them. There's 2 buildings next to each other, government projects. And in that, they told me, they were saying, we didn't go into it, but they said every 4 floors of living quarters for people, and then every 4 floors, and then every 5th floor was all commercial, or they had a full-on police department in there. They had all sorts of government agencies in there. They had grocery stores in there, doctors and dentists and laundries, everything that a city would have within it, to have it, liquor stores and drug store, everything. Every 5th floor was that. And but then they also said the interesting thing, if you went in there, they actually have about 1,000 people per floor, approximately, living on them. If you walk down a hall, the average door has 2 to 3 locks on it. And there are padlocks and all sorts of. The crime inside of there is absolutely terrible, of every form of crime that any city has. But it's just one building going up. They said you could actually, they don't have, the time, they don't, at hospitals and everything in there, but basically people would go to the hospital, they'd be born there, but they said once you're born, you can actually live inside that building without ever really having to come out until you died. And but the tragedy of it is they've crammed so many people in there. It's impossible even to know the people on your floor, 1,000 people, and the way they all come and go, and the crime and the other things that go on within it. It's just eroding something terribly, and here we're just crammed together so much. And we don't even realize it oftentimes ourselves, even though we may have quieter lives than that. But most of us, maybe you come home at the end of the day, turn on the news, and with all the live news, things going on all over the world. You're just sitting there watching, eating dinner, and next thing you know, they've got some fire that happened downtown, and the fire engines are out there, and they're pulling some bodies out, the people that get caught in it while you're eating dinner live, and then they'll maybe go to something going on in government issues and that are going on around the world, and riots, down in Venezuela, and things of this, the heartache there. And then you go look here, maybe at this caravan, that's come walking up on marching, through whatever number of thousands determined to get into the United States. And you see all these people carrying their babies and whatever, and all the political ramifications from the right or the left or whatever else, the opinions on it. And we're bombarded, with stuff. And then it'll go to, a hurricane, that just came through, North Carolina or Florida, and the devastation of people, standing there looking at their houses gone entirely, or a flood that washed everything away. And you realize all these families, it's gone. Their life is gone. Their world is gone. And we're sitting there past the salt, or something there, as we are watching death, destruction, agony, human struggle. But somehow or another, we just, you can't take it serious. You can't sit there and think seriously about any one of those lives. It'd paralyze you, things. You'd have to, what do we do? I can't, I don't know them, or it's impossible. We just write it off, and we just have to carry on. But the result is, almost like I say, for our own mental health, we have to block it out. But yet we see the whole world thrown at us. And the result is that, as sociologists and psychologists and others tell us, is that there's been just a deadening of the human soul. There's been something there, for people's mental health. We have just blocked out so much of life and so much around that we're becoming more and more careless, society in many ways. We've desensitized, ourselves. When we look and we hear what's going on, even up and down our street, and kids and drugs or things that, the result of it is in the midst of all of this, we're looking, well, what am I supposed to do, with all of this? It used to be, 100 years ago, 50, 75 years ago, you didn't know. You just worked your crops, came in, sat down, had dinner, and, and maybe, you went downtown to a social thing, maybe at church or somewhere, and were with your friends, and how's everything? And life was, in relationships, very manageable. But here along when Jesus comes into this world, seeing everything, in every heart, the Bible says that Jesus gave himself to no man, for he knew the hearts of all men. Everywhere he goes, he sees everyone. Jude 22, it says, some have compassion, making a difference. And here, when you do look here, when Jesus came, Jesus took what was many abstract things about God, and we live in the abstract. We're oftentimes just spectators of people, but when Jesus came, he was not a spectator of people. He was somebody there that he loved to get involved as much as people would allow him almost into their lives. There's all these stories. One of them, a woman who'd been sick for 12 years, an issue of blood, and went to one doctor after another until finally she spent all of her money, there on trying to get healed, and couldn't get healed, couldn't resolve it. And of course, being there an issue of blood, she was now unclean, so she couldn't go to synagogue. She had to stay out of that. Even when she went out in public, she was to identify herself as being unclean, because if anybody touched her, they were now unclean for a period of time until they went through a purification process. And so here this woman, over a 12-year period, she lost everything and everybody. Her world has now been kind of reduced down to absolutely nothing. And hearing that Jesus is coming to town, she does this desperate thing. She decides she's going to sneak in there. And the thought of, maybe if I could somehow or another get close enough to him to touch him, the hem of his garment, I might get healed. And out of a last ditch, she violated the law. She went into where she didn't tell everybody, where people could stay clear. She worms her way in and through things, and ends up, she reaches out, you know the story, touches Jesus, and she is healed. But as soon as this happened, Jesus stops. Whole crowd, everything stops, and Jesus, he says, "Who touched me?" And Peter, the disciple, "Beg your pardon? Who touched you? How about everybody?" You know, the press of the crowd, they said. And what kind of question is that? And he said, "No, I perceive that virtue, power, has gone out from me." And here this woman, probably, I knew I was going to get caught. I knew I was stealing a healing. I knew I was doing something that was maybe terrible. But she comes out and she identifies herself, it was me. But he wanted her to know not that what she had done was a terrible thing, but that her faith, had made her whole. That desire for Jesus to come out and just want to grab onto him, realizing he was the answer, realizing that he could do this. And there as he's sharing with her, and he's blessed that it was her, wishing there. I mean, could you imagine? Stop to think of yourself, or maybe of these people that were all around Jesus, all the massive crowds. No doubt, ones that came home at the end of this, you would not believe what I saw today with my own eyes. I saw him heal, somebody there that hadn't walked in 38 years. There was somebody that had been blind since birth. They were seeing perfectly. Here the testimonies, the stories of all these things, it was the most incredible thing, and how they rave about it and whatever else. And yet at the same time, the vast majority, they were unchanged themselves. They were merely spectators. They came out and saw this great dog and pony show. One time, Jesus, even to the crowd, he said, "Why do you come out here? You come out looking for the bread. You want to see the miracles. You're looking for, something to kind of, happen like that. Is that what it is that's going on with you?" And here as he is sharing with them, he is so desperately longing that people would reach back out to him, that people would respond. He was there to give everything he could. And as the crowds and the masses came and were asking, boy, he loved to do incredible things. But here I think, that Jesus, one of the most wonderful things when he came is the realization that Jesus is not a doctrine, to be discussed, but he's a person, to be experienced. He wanted to be a person with personal relationships. He wanted just to walk, amongst these disciples, these common men like anybody else, and listen to them. Though he'd always heard and knew everything, but now at this dimension, where he had a body that itself was hungry, thirsty, tired, opinions about him, all of these other things everybody else experiences in all of life, and as they would walk through the day together and go through the events and all of the other things, but to see life through this whole new world of the human world. And when he came there, like John says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, the same was in the beginning with God. By him were all things made. Was not anything, and without him was not anything made that was made, and we beheld his glory. The glories of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. We saw him, we held him, we were with him. And now in Jesus here, he could touch people. He had this whole new, incredible, new capacity, in a sense there, as man, that he'd never had of God, as God, to communicate and to express compassion. He had a body. And, when you do look how, sometimes, I don't know why Jesus did some of the things. They're so interesting, some of them. When he'd go out and he'd spit on the ground, make clay of it, put it in somebody's eyes or something, but you think, what an interesting thing. Probably watched man all of history just spit. Oh, that's why they do it. What's going on. You're there within that he now felt it, as a human being, and where he would just wash people's feet, function the body, build relationships. He was a person that loved personal relationships. He didn't come here saying, "I am the Almighty God. I'm the omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient God, the timeless, eternal." No, all those things of which he was. But he loved seemingly to, in the Bible, God loved to introduce himself. "I'm the God of your fathers, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." And he came, I am a part, I want to be a part of people. And I think that when we look there and realize so many of our problems in life, or we don't see each other, And, because of the fact that we have just blocked things out. And I don't know how you can function without doing that, for the most part. I don't think you can go home and turn on the TV and just start crying, and things. I don't think you can go home and watch TV and, and pull out your wallet and just start writing checks to wherever. It'll soon all be gone if you're just gripped by whatever is out there. But I do think that one of the things with the deadening, and the desensitizing and the dumbing down of society and culture that's happening, the result is sometimes people that we should see, we don't. Sometimes people that the Lord looks into, that is who you should see. A man named Blake, he once said, I'll repeat it a couple times because to me it is so insightful. But he says, this life's dim windows of the soul distorts the heavens from pole to pole and leads you to believe a lie when you see with and not through the eye. Let me say it again. Interesting. This life's dim windows of the soul. It distorts the heavens from pole to pole and leads you to believe a lie when you merely see with and not through the eye. In other words, we all have a soul and we have these eyes, but when we merely just see with the eye, we just, that happened. We can collect all sorts of data, but it doesn't give any feedback to the soul. And when the dim windows of the soul only work in one thing and it doesn't feed back to it, it's the dim windows of the soul, dim windows of the soul. It leads you to believe a lie when you merely see with, but not through the eye. It's not going back and touching us. It's not affecting us. And here Jesus, when he comes in Luke 7, to this Simon the Pharisee's house. And there's quite a gathering of their people, no doubt they're all around. And one of the things, by the way, to understand the culture, if you don't, is that, of course, Judaism, they didn't have a separation of church and state. And the cities were basically the mayor, essentially. The city was the town Pharisee. And that's where things gravitated around. They didn't have city halls and city governments. The Pharisees were ones that were basically over most of these things. And their homes were very public. They weren't just somebody's private place. So oftentimes when there was meetings of things happening over things, they would be around, their house. And one of the things also, because they were kind of like the mayor or something like that in their culture, when somebody of note came, just like, your city would be, if you're Phoenix or whatever, if the governor of Arizona came to Phoenix, something, the mayor, whether, I don't know who's a Republican, Democrat, and, or what on, but there would just be, welcome, they'd give them a key to the city, thank you to the governor for coming here for us, even though they may not agree, they may be absolutely opposed, point after point, but there's still just a political graciousness, come, you're here for something, and they play this sort of a game. That's how it's always been. Well, Jesus had come. And so it wouldn't be an odd thing for the Pharisee to say, would you like to come, to my house and have a meeting there? And kind of like, welcome. He didn't, even though he obviously had no desire to. But he's kind of the expedient and the correct, sort of a thing, politically, you might say. Well, so Jesus had come to his house. And then as he comes in comes this woman who everybody in town knew who she was. Knew of her reputation there quite commonly. But when she comes in and she ends up there, her tears, or she's washing his feet with her tears, wiping them with her hair. She's taking ointment and putting him on it there. She's kissing his feet. And Simon, when he sees this, he's there no doubt. I mean, any Pharisee would be just thinking, man, I'd love to catch this guy. I don't believe in him. I think he's the best scam artist that ever came along. This guy is not for real. And whoever it is that can reveal the fact this guy's a fraud, I mean, he's going to be great in Judaism, with it. And so he's sitting there, no doubt, just thinking, how can I trap him? That's what the Pharisees always try to do. How can I trip him up, get him to say something incriminating or show he's a fraud? And they couldn't do it. They try. Well, he's sitting there, no doubt, thinking the same thing. And in comes all of a sudden a gift to him. Man, I'm sitting here thinking, how can I trip this guy up? And yet he looks and here's this woman, probably a prostitute there, that everybody else knew she was. And she's coming here, she's kissing his feet, her tears are washing his feet and face, she's put ointment on him, and he's thinking, I just got a gift, the ultimate gift. He's thinking to himself, this man, if he were a prophet, really, the real deal, he'd know who and what manner of woman this is, for she's a sinner. And Jesus, of course, knowing the hearts of all men, can read it. He knows exactly what's going on within him, and he answers him. That's kind of a scary thing, isn't it? You're just thinking something, and then Jesus starts carrying on a conversation with your thought inside. He said, Simon, I have somewhat ought to say to thee. Oh, Master, say on. Sure, go on. As he's no doubt sitting there, let him talk, and everybody. Watch this, folks, as he's kind of carrying on this superficial. Yes, say on. He said, there's this fellow. And he had two men that owed him, one of them a lot of money, and then the other one not all that much. But when neither one of them could pay, he said, but he frankly forgave them both. Now, which one do you suppose loved him the most? And Simon's very careful on this thing, rather than saying, well, obviously, the one who forgave them. He says, well, I suppose. Almost like, assuming you just gave me all the data, and there's not any more to it, and he's not going to get set up. He said, well, I would suppose that the one that he forgave the most. He says, no trick question, that's right. That's what it was. That's all I wanted to know. You're right. And then it says he turned to the woman. Now he turns, and here's this woman doing it. He is now turned, and he is looking at her, but it says, and he's speaking to Simon. And he asked Simon a question. He said, Simon, seest thou this woman? Now, obviously, everybody saw her. But here, when he asked this question, he asked this thing. He didn't. Usually, many of Jesus' questions were quite rhetorical. It was obvious the answer. When he said, "Seest," in other words, no, you don't. You don't see her. But he would ask it there in such a way, because here it is that Simon, on one hand, as all this is happening, he's seeing one thing. But Jesus is looking there, and he says, do you see this human being? Do you see this woman? And obviously he hadn't. He just saw a thing, a body, an experience, a reputation, a symbol, whatever else that she had just been classified as in his mind, in his thought. Not her, not a person. Didn't see that. And so often, many times, we are around people and we see numbers or dollars or images or reputations or something there, and who somebody is or who they are in the world. Actually, it was years ago now. A lot of years, but I was in Palm Springs, in Southern California, doing a conference. And like this, we broke up for lunch and went into town, and the pastor and a few of us wives, we went into town, we went into a restaurant. We sat down in this restaurant, and while we're there was something really odd going on. Everybody's looking around, and we're wondering, what's that? What's going on? Well, the waitress comes along, and while she's there, I turned and I said, excuse me, what's going on here? What's up? And she said, well, don't look now. But she said, right behind me, John Travolta. He's here, they're doing a movie. And they came over for lunch. And I look over, and sure enough, just next table, there's John Travolta sitting there having lunch, and 3 or 4 other people. And I'm kind of a teaser something by nature, which isn't usually that good sometimes, but I turned to her and I said, oh, great. I said, great. And she what? I said, would you do me a favor? And she said, yes, what? I said, we just want to have a quiet lunch. Just a quiet lunch. And I would appreciate it if you would not tell anybody I'm here. And she said, I won't. I'll be. And it was the funniest thing, because she goes back to her little station, where they got the plates and silverware and stuff, and somehow she told the other waiters and waitresses, because all the time they're peeking out and they're looking, who is that guy? Trying to figure. Because for about an hour of my life, I was somebody. I have no idea who. But it was quite exciting there. Everybody's sitting at the table, watching this thing with me, and said, who do you think you are? I said, I don't know. I got to figure it's kind of fun. That you can see them doing it. But we have this thing where we get somebody in our mind. we have this category: rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief. And all of these sort of things. Candlestick maker or butcher, baker, or whatever all those things are. We see we see somebody and we throw them into a category, and you can't help that. That's not bad. That's not wrong necessarily. But here, Jesus, he looks and he sees this woman. He saw a human being, and knowing her, he saw everything about her. And there was something, no doubt. He saw her whole life. We don't know what it was. Maybe who knows? Maybe as a young girl, she's growing up, and there, maybe a relative, abuses her. Maybe some boyfriend that she's in love with or whatever, and wants to marry her or thinks this is serious, and gets her to, give herself to him. There's something, and then he discards her, and then another guy, and then somebody else over here, and the next thing she feels like trash, and the next thing now she's got a reputation in town, and now there next thing she's just categorized, and now there's nothing else to do but to now support yourself this way, that you have been thrown. But Jesus sees it all. He sees this little girl. He sees her grow up. He sees the mess she's in. He sees all of that, but he traces it all back. And somehow or another, there as he sees all of this, he cares. And he looks at her. He sees her now. We don't know the interchange they had before. Some contact to her. Now she has showed up, and there she is at his feet, and she's weeping. Tears are dripping down on his feet, wiping his feet with her hair. She's brought an alabaster. She brought an ointment there to put on him. So obviously she knew he was there and wanted this opportunity to do this. But he looks at Simon. He said, something, Simon? He said, you see her? And he said, something? I came to your house. You didn't give me a kiss. Now, one of the things in the Hebrew culture, everybody did. Just the way you greeted people. Like we shake hands or give a pat on the back or something, or an embrace. They would kiss each cheek. It's just how you come. You're welcome to the house. Come on in. And that's just what you did. Welcome here. And then they would wash your feet. It was like a cup of iced tea, a glass of iced tea or something there for you. You'd been out walking in the Palestinian sun. It's dry. Your feet are caked. And, here you would wash their feet, or a servant would wash their feet. It'd be so refreshing. They always had that. And then by the front door, they had ointment. And then they would put on ointment. You've been out there, your skin is dry, you've been walking in the sun, and it would just be like somebody gave you a hug, gave you a kiss there, wash your feet, put it on, and now relax. Welcome to our house. He said, I did this thing. You didn't do any of them. This woman, she washed my feet with her tears, dried them with her hair. You gave me no ointment, she gave me ointment. You gave me no kiss, she hadn't stopped kissing. And he says, by the way, he says this way, he said, just so you're aware, her sins, which are many. I'm very cognizant of it. I know her suffering. I know the story. I know what she's doing. I know how she got into it and how it happened and all of that other thing, her blame, her part, other people's part, whatever. I really don't care about any of those. I just see a woman who's in trouble. I see a woman that she needs to be saved. One of the things my father-in-law, he's in heaven now, but he was a doctor, and one of the things every doctor takes, the Hippocratic Oath that they swear to, the oath that you take when you become a doctor. When somebody comes in, they may be somebody out there, you get an ambulance comes in, and here's some little old lady in one of the ambulances that just got, hit by a drunk in her car, and she's there, just fighting for her life, and then the next ambulance pulls in behind, and here's the drunk that was driving the car, that ran through the red light, that hit the lady, and now he's all racked up and bleeding and broken bones. But the oaths that just human beings take when they see somebody, whether you were the one that was inflicted upon you or you were the one that inflicted it, you're there to do everything you can to save life. And there we take an oath there that we don't choose one above another. We do all for both. And here, that's just human beings. But Jesus looked at this Pharisee and said, you don't even see this woman. You don't even care, about her, Simon. And he says, as he's looking at her and talking to Simon, do you see this woman? And ultimately, what this whole thing to me, what it all comes down to on this is that in this session, because we'll break in a few minutes, is that I just like to ask men one question. That's what I'm not asking you to go into all the world and do something. I'm not asking you to start crying watching TV. But I would ask you, do you see your wife? Seest thou this woman? Do you see her? You know, and I mean, she changed her name, address, phone number, future, purpose, identity, everything to yours. And here, you know, somebody there, but do you just see her? You're not going to answer all of her problems. You're not going to solve everything. But one of the most powerful things is when a woman realizes her husband sees her. He sees, he cares, he listens. Once in a while, I have my own wife, she'll come up to me and she's talking and I'm doing something over here and she'll grab my face and turn it to her and say, I'm talking to you, you know, something. And do you see me? Now put that down. And we're so prone sometimes to doing things like this and not seeing them, not really being aware. And I remember one time my wife says, you know something, you guys are so odd. We know you can't answer all our problems. We know that, and most of us, we aren't expecting you to, but what we do want is somebody who listens to us, somebody who cares and hears and wants to know. You see, one of the things I found in ministry, I don't mind at all. I don't mind. I don't have, you know, any of our pastors, or never did, you know, where men counseled women. And it's just not healthy, and we don't do it. But in one sense, I don't mind talking to your wife. I wouldn't mind hearing, you know, what's going on. I don't make a practice of it at all, but only something there. Sometimes I'll sit down and I can listen to. And one of the reasons we never would have pastors counsel women is because sometimes a pastor can sit with a woman for 30 or 40 minutes and listen to her, and hear all of this, and give full attention to it, and that woman can think, you know, something. My husband hasn't listened to me in years, and you actually care. You actually are listening, and you want to help me, and you want to pray for me, and you want to, you know, and sometimes, man, I think I'm more in love with you than I've been with my own husband. That's one of the reasons we don't do that. You don't get around that. But at the same time, one of the reasons it doesn't bother me in a sense to do this because talk to your wife. And I go, oh man, the guy's an idiot. He doesn't do. He can't turn a screw and tighten the thing so you can make the door work. You know, I mean, I don't say that, but I mean, but I'll think that. You know, and yeah, I can't. You know, you can't carry the groceries in when you go shopping. He can't pick his plate up and put it in the sink. You know, after you eat dinner, he can't push a vacuum cleaner for a few minutes. You know, and say I don't mind seeing all that about you and talking to your wife, because when I'm done, I pray for her and God bless you. Bye. But see, if I listen to my wife, I've got a honey-do list at the end of it, you know, 4 hours long to go fix it. Like, if I listen to her, I say, how are you? And what's going on with you? And say, well, I'll tell you, my husband, he won't do a screw. And I realize, oh, that's me. You know, my husband can't pick up a plate. That's me. My husband can't, you know, and then now it's looking at your wife. But there's nobody that should be more. And when we find ourselves as men, when you walk away from here, hopefully there's all sorts of little nuggets of thought that Ephesians would pass on to you. But if at the end of the day you look there and say, God, help me see this woman. You know, when you're going home or you're maybe, you know, having a meal together and having the opportunity to talk, say, how are you? How are you really? You want to blow your wife away, maybe sit and say, what did you get out of the conference? Anything you want to say to me from it? A lot of them say, really? A lot of them think, I'll bet they don't. They'd rather not say a word. They'd rather, okay, was that, we got it done, we did it, you wanted to go, we signed up, we did it, okay, all right. We're good for another year, you know, or something, until the next conference, you know, or something. But when there's something, no. You know, one of the things, you know, because one day, like Ephesians says, that Jesus does all this to us because one day he's going to present it to himself, a glorious church. And, you know, and he, and so whatever he puts in, he realizes it all comes back. He's an incredible investor, you know, with it. He knows that one day he's going to present it to himself, a glorious bride. And she's going to look at him, us, and absolutely adore him like we can't imagine what he's done for us. And it's the same thing in the world. You know, when there's something there that woman feels and realizes, he absolutely loves me, and he deeply, deeply cares. for it, and that, and I love him. So that's. I don't know if you have thoughts to close on or add or share, or you're looking at me, you're looking over there, you're looking back over there, you're pointing over there, but they're still obviously going in there, and so maybe we might make too much noise.
They'll be going till like 4 or 5.
Yeah. What time is it now? No, they will actually. Gene's not real long. I actually, but anyway. Anything anybody want to share before we do break up? Any thoughts about, the weekend, or as men, or?
It's easy. It really is easy to get wrapped up in stuff. I mean, that we're supposed to be providers. We're supposed to be, keep the roof over the head, pay the bills, and do all this other stuff. And at the same time, we're supposed to be loving and caring, and it's really, really easy to get wrapped up into providing the daily bread. And then, as you get to a point, and I can't talk about it, but every so often, you say, well, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
Because we pour ourselves out into so much other sometimes, and then don't have anything left over for the most important things in our lives. And it is a balancing act. It's really difficult. That's why we need things like this. That's why we need each other to keep ourselves in balance, because it's so easy to lose the focus, on what's really important. Yeah. What we're working for, it's just work after a while. It's just getting that money to pay the bills and pay the house, et cetera, et cetera.
Paying the price, it's kind of what it, with him. It's funny, some of us were talking, I just went through a thing. We had one of my sons and his wife live with us for a number of years. Both of them had changed some jobs during the process. They have 2 little girls. And we just loved having them with us. It was just incredibly wonderful having them. But it was also hectic. And with that, as well, our house really, it had already needed a lot years ago. And then we just kind of, we just let it all kind of sit. Well, then they moved out. And when they move out, you look at the walls and realize, man, this place needs to be painted really bad, and the carpets were just thrashed. I went and got a thing, rented a thing to clean it, and got deep cleaner and went back over it, and didn't do it the next day. I kept it and did it again, thought, man, I cleaned the carpet 3 times. I couldn't get the stuff out. Finally, we got to get carpet. And so we got to paint. And then we had a bathroom and a powder room that had tile in it, and the kind of tile, it had cracked. The house had settled, just a small little amount, but it didn't take much. This crack had worked its right, looking right in it, you see this crack down. And so, and there's a guy at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, who actually many, many years ago put in the tile. Maybe I wonder if the guy's still doing it, because he gave me a great deal. So I call him, tell him what's going on. He said, oh, Don, he said, man, Yeah, he said, no problem. He says, we now have a new thing we put underneath, it'll avoid. So he says, matter of fact, he says, yeah, but let's put in some, that stuff I put in was not really that great. Let's put in some, what would your wife like? And he said, so he said, I'll tell you, well, let me take her over. So meet me, and they took me, we met at the tile place. He said, I get 40 off, whatever it is, and we'll put this in, we want to do this. And so we get over there. And I'm just thinking, my wife's so wonderful. You want to paint? I'm colorblind. One of the things that, so to me, all it takes to make me happy. Very simple. I want a bed, a TV, and a refrigerator. After that, my wants are not very significant. Women love, everything matches and got all this together, but that's how they express themselves. And my wife just loves, kind of just having a pretty house and pretty colors or whatever else. Not extravagant by any means. It's very manageable that way. But so, okay, let's paint it and let's do new carpet. And so we, get some bids on carpet. Not a lot. We didn't need a lot of it. But anyway, so okay, and then this guy takes us to the tile place. And then she's walking around and she sees some marble flooring. It's just really pretty, and stuff. And he said, and so she said, and so he says, she didn't know. She said, is this very expensive? And he said, no, don't worry about it. He told me, it's not cheap. He says, but I get, he said, and I said, well, let's go for it, whatever. Then they get talking. And we, in this powder bathroom we're doing, the tub, we have a tub in it, but a little rust is starting to show through. And I went to the hardware store, and I got this stuff to, cover over, the epoxy and stuff with it, but it's not perfect by any means. And so he says, well, is this everything you'd like to do? And I'm sitting there, yes, it's everything, Kevin. That's it. That's it. But I didn't say that. And she said, well, I'll tell you, we got this tub, in their bathroom, it's what they're on the floor. And he said, I said, no, I don't, you see all these shows now where the fixer-uppers, where they're taking out tubs and putting in showers, just walk-in showers. And he said, we can do that. I said, no, we can't do that, next thing, she says, can we do that? I said, yeah, honey, that'd be great. I'm just watching the Bucks. That's me, kind of a guy. And one thing I know, and it was not terrible, but it's just I realized she never asked for anything. She's just never, all these years of life, just the way that she just loves to minister, loves to serve. That's her heart. And here, when she wants something, I'm sitting there thinking, what an idiot! I'm there just doing everything with my checkbook in my brain, watching all this, and realizing, what do you want? And then it's funny, as she sees all this happen and goes in, I can't tell you how many times you come to me, and she said, I can't believe you'd fix up the house like this. It's just gorgeous. And now the interesting thing that happened, I got a call from a realtor out of the blue, and they somebody maybe wants to buy it, and we're sitting there thinking, and I know she doesn't want to sell it. And so I don't know what's going to happen with this, but the point is if you didn't want to be inconvenienced, you shouldn't have got married. Just that simple. Yes.
Well, a couple of things is, I have a friend who he was married twice. It didn't go real well for him. And the reason it didn't go real well for him is because when we get married, we are under attack. Satan doesn't want to break up those that are in sin and living the life of sleeping together. Yeah. And so we're engaged. We're committed to fighting that battle. And I think we have to realize that's what we do to honor the Lord. Yeah. Is we take on that battle. Yeah. I think that's great of all you guys to decide to take that on. Yeah. And it's definitely a lot of work. As far as working and earning money and putting a roof over your head. I don't think it says that much about that in the Bible. It doesn't say, what I need you to do as a God-fearing man is to put a roof over somebody's head. Yeah. He says, I will take care of you. Yeah. If you focus on me, and the focus on me is in relationships. Right. It's not in the money or the stuff or anything like that. And the first relationship, obviously, that you brought up is your wife. Yeah. And if you have established that relationship, then it really does away with all the other stuff. My wife, she doesn't need anything. She's happy with everything that she has. Yes, we have desires, we have ambitions, but you know what? We came from California in a one-bedroom, one-bath apartment, and 600 square feet, and we decided to change, to come out here, and we could get a little bit more for the same amount of money that I make. And wouldn't be gone all that time. Yeah. I had a decision to make. I could have worked 60 hours a week, and I could have made, 60% more than the job I took. 60% more than the job I took. Yeah. Because it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about her wanting me to make money. It had nothing to do with that. We'll make ends meet on what I made. Yeah. And that's such a blessed place to be when your wife can take that pressure off of you. Yeah. Because you show her how much you love her and how much you're in relationship with other men. I mean, it's great to know already meeting these guys. I just came out here. So it's just, it means so much more to know that I have men that I could call on. Yeah. And they can call on me anytime. Yeah. The body of Christ. Look at this other friend of mine. I said, what are you going to do? Why don't you invite all your friends over? He has no friends. Yeah. He has no friends. Yeah. He has his girlfriend that he's living in sin with. Yeah. And that's his whole life. Yeah. He works his butt off just to have fun, that temporal going to that concert, or when the concert's over, then what? Well, then we're going to look for the next concert. We're going to look for the next thrill. We're going to look for and it's just going to get old for this guy.
Yeah.
It's just real sad
Yeah.
to see that he's walked away because he doesn't want to fight the battle.
Yeah.
He goes, well, we don't want to get married because people who get married always get screwed up. Well, it's because you're not fighting the battle. You don't go in there, you have to go under attack. So
Yeah.
I think these things are great, and I think that we can only example, hopefully, those things that are working because we're doing what's in the instruction manual, and it's all for our own good.
Amen. It is. I look there, it's funny when you're young. I mean, I'm sitting here now, we have three boys, 3 incredible daughter-in-laws, 12 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren. And the older you get, I love ministry, and we've got so many friends all over the world and things. But in one sense, I look at my wife, and she's what I've got. She is what I have. I look at her, and the fact that this woman still somehow or another thinks I'm a good guy, and still likes the fact that she married me, is thanking Jesus for that. I'm sitting there thinking, wow, that's, and you pinch yourself. I got saved at junior college. Not one of my friends that I know anything about that have been able to track through life. I was no different than any one of them. Not one of them have they held their lives together, marriages together, families together. They've had kids out of wedlock. They partied. There's still some of them. It's funny, look back at high school, the tailgate party world, have a football game. Here they are, 70s, and that's still their world. You want to say, are you ever going to grow up going through this? And I look at my life and realize there's only one difference. One thing happened. Come to Jesus. And somehow or another he started saying, all right, we're going a different route. It's a different world, but I think you're going to love it, and boy, do I. And sometimes I thought, boy, I was giving up stuff by doing the right thing, not realizing I never given up anything, that it hasn't been returned to me in spades, that. Yeah, but
what's great is to go on something like this when we're coming up here. Our experience is to be with each other wherever we go, and that's the good part. It doesn't matter what we see. We don't have expectations. We don't know what it was going to be like up here, but it's been an adventure. Yeah. And so we're doing that together. And yes, I've turned down the wrong street. I've gone the wrong way, because hey, I was leading. She lets me lead. And she doesn't go, hey, you went down you came down this street, and we both agree this is really probably not the best part of town. So we turn around and we go back. And it's just, there's no, you remember that time you turned down that street and went the wrong way, or screwed up, or did something wrong? It's so nice when somebody's there to say, no, I'm admitting that I'm going to let you run the course, and I'm there to go through with you. And not to, hold that against you or anything. So it's just, it's such a great thing to go anywhere. We just pick a place and we just go. We go, you know what? That was really not a great place to go, but you know what? We had fun together because we experienced it together.
It all turns. The Lord has a way of turning, even the years eaten by the cankerworm. He restores them to us. So. Anyway,
Yes, brother.